Yeah, you mentioned the fact that intuitively lots of people do think that, I mean, I don't know, like hedonistic experiences are ultimately void or shallow. It seems to me that this intuition comes from the naive realist idea that experiences are only authentic when they are like legitimately representing a state of the world. So when you mention the possibility of people experiencing bliss induced with biotech, oftentimes they may think, well, it would be an illusion because actually the state of the world is not does not merit this kind of experience. It would just be hallucinating well-being, and therefore it would be fake or lacking in value. So, what would you say about this concern?
I think, yes, it's absolutely vital that that we should be planning global well-being. It's not a matter of individuals seeking simply to maximize their own well-being, and that until we can ensure that all sentient beings enjoy invincible bliss, one is going to want to retain the functional analogues of some at least of today's nastier Darwinian emotions, such that, for instance, to retain critical insight, one will want to retain the functional analogues of low mood or anxiety. And so, yes, it can't all be done at once. But in the long run, why should bliss need to be earned any more than, let's say, vision needs to be earned? To have visual experience, it's not as though one should need to work for 20 years and then have the capacity to represent the visual world. It's innate. And likewise, I would say for hedonic tone, that we should all be born with an extraordinarily rich hedonic tone, and go on from there. I would hope to amplify it further.
So let's say that yes, you've got somebody convinced in this line of reasoning. Practically speaking, what sort of likely path towards global well-being do you envision? And very practically, like for students, people who might be deciding what to study, what career to have, and also research universities that are thinking about how to allocate resources, what would be a general line or path that would enable this or accelerate its occurrence?
I think the biggest obstacles to phasing out the biology of suffering are ultimately ethical, ideological, not technical. So, though I would most certainly urge anyone with any kind of scientific inclination or background to get involved in the biosciences, to study molecular biology, neuroscience, clinical psychopharmacology, I also think there is a role for philosophy, studying ethics, even marketing and PR, distasteful as this might be. How suffering is going to be purged from the world, clearly this kind of crystal ball gazing, as I said, any concrete predictions I give are likely to be mistaken. What I would love to see, but I'm perhaps sceptical, will happen is some kind of nasty example, Manhattan Project, or something like the moon landings, a coordinated international effort to reduce and then abolish physical pain, and also the genetic predisposition to experience emotional pain. More realistically, I think it's going to start with individual prospective parents who have their own genome sequenced using pre-implantation genetic diagnosis to pick the characteristics of their future children. Interestingly, pre-implantation genetic diagnosis is used most commonly today not in the advanced, rich Western countries, but in India and China, to avoid the misfortune of having a girl. Now, one could argue that our priorities are rather skewed, that we should be aiming to have happier, healthier children instead. It's worth noting too that anyone who is extremely worried about this question about what is or isn't natural, that pre-implantation genetic diagnosis is not in the strict sense genetic engineering. One is simply choosing variations that nature has thrown up naturally. I most certainly do think we're going to be heading for an era of designer zygotes in which we do sculpt and engineer and author transhumans and then post-humans who do have a level of intellectual, emotional, and who knows, spiritual sophistication that is physiologically inaccessible now, but nonetheless that's in the future, in that simply by using pre-implantation genetic diagnosis one could dramatically reduce the burden of suffering.